It's a good background in a way.
Yes. You're already live, I think. Look at this.
Yeah. Looks great.
All right. Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon, lovely people, depending on where you're watching us from in this beautiful world of ours. I am so excited because today I'm doing this in person for the first time in a really, really long time. And the lovely Kate flew in all the way from Melbourne just to join us live here. So this is really, really exciting for me to have you here, Kate. Before I get you to introduce yourself, I'm going to share a tiny little story how the two of us actually met, because I love when things happen through collaboration, when things happen through really, really beautiful networks. And this beautiful network that I got introduced to Kate through is through Monica Rosenfeld from Stories That Stir. It's a lovely lady called Diana, and she watched my talk that I did at Stories That Stir, and she said, I love what you do, Marie. You have to meet this lady. And she sent me a newspaper article cut out. And, these days where everything is online, I really love receiving a paper newsletter, like a newspaper article about Kate and her beautiful business that she will share a little bit more about today. And I reached out to Kate and we had this beautiful connection instantly. And the rest is history. We'll share that. Bear with us. But before I talk any further, Kate, would you do us the honor to introduce yourself?
Thank
to our
you.
audience
Thank
here?
you, Marie. And hello, everyone. It's great to be here. I flew up from Sydney. So, yes, my name's Kate. I am a marriage and funeral celebrant, and I have a business. Well, I have three businesses, but my main passion project and business that I am so passionate about is called Tomorrow Funerals. And we specialize in doing different types of funerals. So we do memorials generally. So what that means is that we are able to help families with a very simple package that is just a cremation and then followed by a memorial celebration. Yeah. And the reason that we do that is that it allows us to bring the celebration of life outside of a traditional funeral parlour, so that you can have your celebration anywhere from backyard with a barbecue to, your fanciest restaurant on top of the city, a gallery, a sports club. So it's just a wonderful way to celebrate life.
I love it, and I have so much more to say about this, what spoke to me and why I wanted to reach out to you. But before we go there, I'd love to hear your background story. What made you decide to actually work in the space of grief? Because it's nothing that people usually go like, oh, this is a fun topic to work with, let's do that. There is usually a really deeper story to that. Would you mind sharing what your intro to that world of grief is and making a difference in that space?
For sure, yeah. And look, it's a big story, and I'll pull out some of the main elements, because of like anything like this, there's a lot of elements. But in 2015, when I was 45, I was diagnosed with cancer, and it was quite a serious illness. I was out of work for a year, where I had to spend the year having surgery and chemo and radio, the whole thing, And I remember during that year, I had a lot of thinking time. And I remember looking around at my life and thinking, how could this happen to me? I had everything that I wanted in my life, a beautiful family. I had my own business in fashion and marketing, and a beautiful wider family. So I looked around at my life and I thought, something has to change, and it was work. And I realized that I wanted to move into a helping profession. And for a number of reasons, I decided to move into celebrancy. So I looked at marriage celebrancy and funeral celebrancy. And around that time, we had a couple of really big deaths in our family as well. My cousins who died. And in doing that, I was able to see two types of funerals. The first cousin who died unexpectedly, and it was a terrible, difficult young death. We gave her a very traditional funeral, and it cost a lot of money, and it was okay. It wasn't quite what we wanted as a family. And then about a year later, her sister again died unexpectedly, and it was a terrible, grief period for us. And because I had already started at work as a celebrant and a funeral celebrant, I was able to say to my cousins, her children, let me help you. And we put on we took care of the cremation in a very simple way. And then we spent all our time, energy, creativity, resources on putting on the most amazing family party at a beautiful event space.
I love this so much.
We had champagne. We did what it was right for her.
Yeah.
And that's really was the inspiration for the business.
Yeah. I love what you say here, because it really is always about what is right for that person, you know, and often people don't have the chance to actually have that conversation. What would you like to happen? You know, I'm quite clear on what I would want to happen, you know, when the day comes and my earthly being, you know, comes to an end, my earthly journey, I should say. I know that I want people to wear colors. I want people to come and party. I want people to celebrate the joy that we had together in life. I want the memories to be highlighted and not people to dip into this hole of now it's over. With my spiritual beliefs, I think it is a transition into the purest form of love there is. That's my spiritual belief. And for that, to me, there is not really a reason to go into heaviness and darkness. I want people to celebrate that with me. You know, it's but everybody's different. And this is why I love that there are different options available. This is what I love about Tomorrow Funerals, that it is simplified. I love that you guys are, I should say we guys, I'm taking something away here, that we are very, very transparent in the pricing. I love that, because I often feel that when you have to organize a funeral, it is very often unexpected. It is very often with little time to prepare or having thoughts about what you actually want. And then you are in a position where you very rarely shop around. You don't go like, oh, let's get some comparison quotes. You usually go with one or two businesses. You go with the one that speaks to you. And then you are hit with upsell, 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 upsell. And
absolutely,
I find that revolting and quite appalling that in the most vulnerable time, I often feel that businesses take advantage of your vulnerability in that time. And I love that Tomorrow Funerals takes that completely away. There's one transparent price. It's even written on the website, and it's very clear of all the inclusions and all the things that are add-ons that you can choose, i.e. what you said before, you know, would you like to do that at home? Would you like to do that in a beautiful location? It can be luxurious or completely basic or beautiful at home, whatever you want, you know, and this is out of our choice. But what we offer at Tomorrow Funerals is really something that is very transparent and very clear to see. So you mentioned before, Kate, that you run 2 other businesses. Can you share a little bit about that as well? Because I like one of them, like I just could not believe it. I love it. I'll let you share about this.
So I'm a marriage celebrant. So I have my own business as a marriage celebrant doing, you know, your big fancy weddings, and I absolutely love that. And that's really how I started. But during COVID, a girlfriend of mine who's a celebrant called me to ask me if I was interested in joining in with a new business, which is called, she said the name of the business that she had the idea for was called I Do Drive Through. And without knowing anything else, I just said, okay, I'll be in, because the name was so great. Yeah. Because the idea of that business was during COVID, we helped couples get married in their cars, literally, because there was the social distancing. And so the celebrant would stand outside the car and we would be, you know, they would be safely away. And it's been great. We even do weddings in America. So that's gone Australia-wide. We now it's really just an elopement business. So the whole premise of the business is that we do weddings in 2, 5 or 7 minute ceremonies. So it's the complete opposite of my other business, which is big fancy weddings with a lot of detail. So it's great. But so I am a busy
Vegas for me.
It's very Vegas.
That's all I can think of. I do drive through, and you're like, let's get married, drive through wedding.
That's right. Well, a lot of our branding is very Vegas. So you have to have a look at the website. I do drive through, and it's spelled THRU.
Perfect. We will be sharing the links in the show notes anyway. So whatever we talk about here today, we will be sharing in the links as well. So you can reach out to Kate. You can check out all the websites. It is absolutely beautiful. Let's talk a little bit more about Tomorrow Funerals, because that is the thing. Like, I remember our first conversation that we had, and it sounds funny because Kate and I only connected like 2 months ago, maybe. And I'm saying the first conversation we had, this is probably our 3rd or 4th now. So, but it feels like I've known you forever, because like, you know, the 3 conversations that we had, we realize we have so many things overlapping in
Yes,
our
we have
lives,
a lot in
even
common.
our marketing, advertising
Yeah.
background, and then
We've both
yeah.
got boys similar age.
Yeah.
Yeah. We had a lot of big things happen to us around the same time as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I love that. So for me, one aspect I want to really pick out here, because we already talked about that we are very transparent in the pricing, and that we are very transparent in what is included and what not. So Kate and I, when we first connected, we both like, the business at the moment is Melbourne based, and Kate was like, it would be lovely to maybe extend that to Sydney as well. And I'm like, hello, I'd love to do that with you. I'd love to, because I've already done a couple of celebrations of life previously, but it was never like an official part of my business. I sort of always mentioned it on the sidelines, and now I'm like, I would love to have that as an additional pillar to my business, because everything that Kate does with Tomorrow Funerals is so aligned with what I do, with bringing lightness into grief. And one thing, Kate, that was a real shock to me, I have to say, was when I picked up Rob's ashes. When my husband passed away and I had to go to the cremation place. I don't even know what the official place
The
of that.
crematorium.
Where no, I'm sorry. There was a particular place where I had to pick it up. I don't even think it was a crematorium,
okay,
but I think it was just the memorial or the funeral parlor. I can't remember, because I was in absolute shock back then. Because I had to go and pick up my husband's ashes, and nobody had prepared me for how that would feel, for how heavy the ashes were. That came like a real shock to me. Because the thing is, when you never had anything to do with cremation, that is a factor that nobody shares with you, because it doesn't come up in conversation. It is nothing that you feel prepared for. And me thinking of ashes, you think of ashes like you know them, like in the fireplace, and light and grey, and the consistency, the weight. I don't want to go into too much detail, but I can only tell you I was not prepared for it.
Yeah.
And what I love about Tomorrow Funerals is that we actually do that in person. We deliver the ashes in person. We make sure to be with the person who receives them, to prepare them for that. And I think that is such a small but really important factor.
Yeah, I think
all of that.
I think the thing that we've really worked on is I hate to use the word package, because when it comes to, you know,
Let's call it
somebody has
offering.
lost. Yeah, I mean, but it sort of is a package. So
Yeah.
what we've done is we've pulled out what we believe are the really important things. So when you go to a traditional funeral home, for example, the first step that when you walk in the door is that you're going to be shown a room full of coffins after someone's died.
Yeah.
And then, you know, there are so many stories about people being encouraged to buy the more expensive coffin. And really a traditional funeral home, a lot of their profit margin is in selling coffins and selling other things. We keep everything in one sort of simple bundle, so that we're not invested in selling any extras. But we've pulled out all the most humane parts of that experience. So we always use a sustainable cardboard coffin. We partner with an amazing business called Daisy Box, who make beautiful, very simple cardboard coffins that are the most sustainable option. That we've done a lot of research on that. So that just takes away choice. And then we take care of all of the administration.
It simplifies it. I love that.
But the other thing is we hand back the ashes in person. So all of those elements, and then on top of that, you get an amazing celebrant or memorial manager, which is going to be your role to do that combined job, to really take care of you right from the moment that you pick up the phone to the moment at the end where you hand back the ashes by hand. And that might be on the day of the memorial celebration. It might be afterwards. And then there's a whole lot of extra things included, like a beautiful memorial website, a hardcover book with all your photos. We do the tribute video. So there's a lot in it, and I probably can't explain all of what is included. But as I said, the focus is on the celebration, not on the more macabre bits, which people aren't used to, you know, choosing coffins and embalming and things like that. So,
So thinking of your own story, because you obviously came quite close to that moment, or let's just call it as it is directly. You came quite close to death in your journey. And where was the moment for you how did you handle all of that in the midst of everything that was going on in your life and then building the businesses? Can you share a little bit more about that background story? Speaking about the topic of unsilenced grief here, how did grief come into this whole thing? How did you handle your own grief and then turn it into something where, like, you know what, we can do a little bit better than what we have learned from society. Let's change the narrative of grief here a little bit. Can you share a little bit?
Yeah, so I remember in the first few months, and then each time I would have to go for checkups, being utterly terrified, sitting in a doctor's room, literally waiting moment by moment that he's about to open his computer to see where we're up to see what the results were. So there were moments of that experience that were terrifying. But when I look back, I feel like they are really underpinned and they don't stand out, those frightening moments. What stands out during that year was being surrounded by love and an incredible, group of people. My family and friends just really turned up for me and were,
it's incredible.
They were amazing. So I was very much surrounded by love. I did a lot of meditation. I went straight into mindfulness meditation, which is something I've always leaned on, and other types of healing, and what came out of it was something positive. And when I look back, there's so many metaphors around cancer. People say to me, oh, you fought cancer, you beat cancer, you kicked cancer's ass, all that. That doesn't resonate for me. If I were to look back at my life at any moment of my life, I just can never, even some of the hardest things, and I've been through a lot of hard things, I've actually had a lot of ups and downs. I wouldn't change them. I don't regret any of them, even having cancer, because without having cancer and going through that experience, I wouldn't be where I am today. And I'm so incredibly satisfied with my work. I get so much from my work. At the moment, at this period of my life, it's the most important thing to me, other than my children and my family. But yeah, it's a really interesting way to look at it. And I know that's how I connected with you. You were able to go through this incredible loss. And when you started telling me straight away, oh, but I turned it around, I'm like, oh, there's someone else who knows how to turn it around. And it's not easy. And I think, I really think that going through hard things is what brings you a lot. It sounds really...
I often talk about the hidden gifts in adversity. I've mentioned that many times in my podcast as well, because I always feel like they're always there. They're always hidden gifts in adversity. It is just a matter of, do we allow them in? Are we open enough to actually see them? Because often we then could stumble a little bit and fall into the dip of feeling guilty. Guilt is often an emotion that comes up when processing grief. And it's like, am I allowed to be happy? Am I allowed to receive gifts through that? Am I allowed to actually grow through this experience? Because you feel that you are dishonoring the person who has passed. And for me, it couldn't be further from the truth. It's the polar opposite. I'm actually thinking I'm honoring my husband through living his legacy, living the love legacy that he left in our lives, love legacy left in our lives. And I love that, because there was so much love between Rob and I, and we were that couple, and everybody said that to us. And to continue that to me is the most beautiful way of honoring him, rather than falling into this heaviness of what we understand what widowhood is. But at the end of the day, we can change the narrative around all of that, what a widow is or what grief is.
It takes a certain amount of open-mindedness for that. And I think that going through difficult things kind of cracks you open in that way. And I think that's beautiful, because I do meet a lot of people who are in those, they do think that you have to go through this. And as soon as you start imagining what you have to go through, or having expectations of how hard it's going to be, well, it makes it very hard to break out of that. So
I agree.
So I think you're amazing for what you've done. Absolutely amazing.
Two amazing women here. So I just want to say I'm really, really excited about starting this journey of Tomorrow Funerals with you guys, and to be hosting that in Sydney, and to be supporting the business, and also what you stand for in your business. I really like that, because it does offer a different way to do funerals. And I think a lot of the ways we grieve and a lot of the ways we hold funerals is very outdated and doesn't do our loved ones justice. I know that's a very bold statement. I understand that. but having lost very close people in my life, like my dad, where we did a very traditional funeral. But we did do the celebration at the end. So I love that we at least had that part where we really celebrated his life, because that's what we wanted. And also with Rob, we had a complete celebration of his life. We did the cremation, we had the celebration of his life. And I would have never expected in my entire life that the day of my husband's funeral would be one of the most joyful experiences that you can imagine. I would have not expected that. But we booked a venue, and there was the biggest venue that we could find, and it only suited for like 250 people. And I know that there were at least 300, if not more, people in the room, and we made it work, and we were all squashed in. But thinking back now, I know that the room was filled with love and memories and people sharing stories about Rob. And there was one really funny moment because Rob kept telling me about his friend. I'm going to name him here. I know he doesn't mind, Michael Bulsani. And he came up in conversation many times over the years that I knew Rob and we were together, but I had never met him. For whatever reason, it never came to the point. And then when Rob's brother mentioned that he would be there, I'm like, oh, Rob's imaginary friend. That's what I kept calling him. It's like, oh, your imaginary friend, because I never met him. So he got that nickname. And at the celebration of life, I finally met him.
That you met him
his
on that
brother
day.
said, I have to introduce you to Rob's imaginary friend. This is Michael Bulsani. I'm like, oh my God. So that was quite a little bit of a funny moment on that day as well. But I think for you guys watching this, and when you have to make a decision that is so big and it's like a one-off thing, it's nothing that you can ever repeat in your life, that's what makes it sometimes so hard or challenging, I believe. Then please just think about, what would your loved one want? And I know for a fact, when you think of it in a very simplified way, love just wants you to be happy. So I'm absolutely certain that your loved one would want you to celebrate his or her life and to come together and maybe share stories. And Kate and I, or anybody else in our team, would be very, very happy to support you in the journey from really your first phone call to us until the very end. There's so much love and support, and that's what really drew me to Tomorrow Funerals, because there's so much compassion and empathy and love in the business. That's what drew me to you, because in many funeral businesses, especially the one that I work with, and I'm not going to mention a name here, I felt very welcomed, and it was absolutely beautiful, and it was very professional. And as soon as the service was done, it was cut off. It was almost like, the compassion you paid for has ended, I'm sorry, and the door was closed. And I was left breathless when I reconnected with them for something else that I wanted to connect about. And that is certainly not the case with you. And I love that. So, yeah.
I think it's something you touched on earlier as well, is that that moment where people are trying to decide what they're going to do, and you said a lot of the time it happens with an unexpected death. There's no time to sort of think about what funeral business you're going to use. But even the case where people have an expected death, because death is such a taboo subject in our culture, when somebody's dying, what our experience is, invariably people, even up until the moment of death, there's no conversation. What would you like? What can you imagine? And I understand, because we don't want to face the fact that we're going to die, even when we're days away from dying or weeks. And I find that fascinating. There are, some people do have those conversations, but they're rare. And so what we find is that we will get a call and somebody will say, look, my mum passed away and we're ringing 5 funeral homes. And I always think, it takes a year to plan a wedding. How can you make a decision that quickly? So it is important. And I think finding ways to have conversations with older people, perhaps, who are, in terms of, even if it just starts of simple ways, having conversations. Have you ever thought about what song you want played at your funeral? That's always a good one. Oh, this is my favorite song, play it at my funeral. You start with that. It's really important to have those conversations, to start talking about those things, because when somebody dies, the people around them want so much to create something personal and do the right thing, as you're saying, what would they have liked? But sometimes they simply don't know. And of course, our business is all very well and good for people who want something a little bit different, but there are people who want something more traditional, and that is absolutely fine. We're all about making sure that that you find the right sort of event and the right way of celebrating a life, where so often that falls short because there is this cookie cutter approach to the traditional funeral business. So that, a really young, cool kind of person who dies suddenly will end up having a funeral that maybe looks and feels like someone who, for someone who was 90 in a different decade. So we're just about helping people find the right way to celebrate their loved ones.
I want to share something here quickly because I also have often, in particular when I do talks, I often have that as a one giveaway at the end, or one takeaway, I should say, that I encourage people, or used to encourage people, to have the what if conversation. Until very recently, I came across a post that touched me so deeply, and I could feel the essence of it and the truth in it. And that was such a simple post, and it just said, what if is fear-based, and even if is faith-based. So now I have changed my approach to encouraging people to have the even if conversation. Even if something was to happen to me, I have this absolute spiritual belief that my boys, even though they're really young and they're about to turn 15 and 17, I know for a fact that my boys will be okay. And it's a horrible thing to think about. And at the same time, it's such a realistic thing to think about, because it's one of those things you're in this space of, oh, it's not going to happen to me. And I thought the exact same thing. This would not happen to me until Rob passed, and it was instant. He had a brain aneurysm, and all of a sudden he was gone. So because we have lived through that, because we have healed through that, it is a very open topic in our family. Sometimes because there are fears, and sometimes it is fear-based. And Rob and I had the what if conversation because it was fear-based when we had the conversation. He came home late from work. He had a 2-hour detour because of a fatal accident. A young dad has lost his life. His daughter was 16 months old, and it was a front-on accident with a truck, so there was no chance of survival for him. And that caused us to have that conversation. And that was what if, because it was fear-based. It was, oh my God, what if that would happen to us? So in that conversation with Kate today, I really want to encourage you to have the even if conversation. Make it a normal topic, so it doesn't have to be fear-based. So it doesn't have to come to the space where you're worried that something might happen, or you might have been diagnosed with something that could potentially lead to that. Have the conversation without the fear-based, have the faith-based. Even if something was to happen to me today, what would happen? And I had that very conversation with my younger son before I flew out to see you in Melbourne last week. And he mentioned it. He said, this is still a touchy topic for us, isn't it? Because Rob flew out to Perth and he didn't make it back. So then I flew out to Melbourne and I did make it back, obviously. But we had that conversation, and it felt to me like an even if conversation, because I said, even if something was to happen to me, I know that you guys would be fine, and I know you guys will be looked after. And I know that I have done everything to raise them in a way that their life is love-based, and they're surrounded by love, and they're looked after. So this is, I want to encourage you guys, have the even if conversation with your loved ones. What would you like to do? And it doesn't always just have to be about the funeral, but that can be part of it, But as I think start with the song.
Yeah,
what song would
exactly.
you like to hear?
I mean, I think the other thing, just when you're talking, I guess you and I have similar experiences, but different. One thing about working in the funeral industry, it's just that constant reminder of what, that life is short, and it's there to be lived, and we're here for a short time on this plane. And who knows what next. I have my own ideas, but I love that I work. People sometimes say to me, "How do you work in the funeral industry? It must be so hard." And I think,
I just want to ask you.
I actually love my work. I'm so passionate about it because I'm able to give so much and help people so much, and I can see the help that I give people, and that makes a huge difference in their lives. And so it's very, very fulfilling.
I love that you say that, because that was just about my next question. Yeah, absolutely. I see what's happening here. Because I just had somebody say it to me yesterday, and I hear that question all the time. Isn't it so heavy to work in a space of grief all the time? I said, maybe it is, but I work in a space of healing. So my focus is always on, how can we heal through this? How can we find joy in this? How can we make even a funeral a really positive and beautiful experience,
and a healing experience. And I love that you would use that word. And I feel when you say that, it actually makes me realize that in some ways, even when I'm doing the most simple administrative job in terms of maybe helping someone with their death certificate, or there's lots of administrative jobs in my business, by making it easier and clear communication and warm, open-hearted conversation, it's all healing, you know. It's healing people, talking about sometimes we have to bring people in to view their person who's died. They might request that. Giving them the information in the right way. It's helping them have these experiences that will ultimately help them through this period of grief. Or just grief can go on forever. But it's finding your way.
It depends on how you see it.
That's right.
But I think, you know, what you said, administrative, there is so much paperwork to do, and even just having a person to take care of that paperwork for you is such a relief, because there is literally, I think it took me about 6 months to go through all the paperwork after Rob passed away, and that was only the thickness of it, so there was still a lot to come afterwards. So to end on a positive note here, because we've talked a lot about heavy and beautiful and joyful things here, but Kate, if our viewers here could just take one thing away from our today's conversation, if there's one thing that you can leave them with, like, please focus on that or have a think about that, what would that be?
I really think it is about opening up people's minds to finding new ways to celebrate life, giving people permission to throw away the rule book when it comes to traditional funerals. You don't, there's no have tos. You know, we have to, you know, cremate the body or bury the body, but other than that, celebrating the life, there's so many possibilities, and the mind can be opened.
Love that, love that, love that. Thank you so much for being here today. I really love that we could do this side by side today. It was very different. And a little bit of background noise here because you know, it's a shared office space, but I really love that we had the opportunity to catch up in Melbourne first and now in Sydney. So
it was so nice to chat to your following and your listeners. Thank you for having me, everyone.
And stay tuned for more updates. And if you like what you see, please feel free to share this this episode of Unsilence Grief, and feel free to subscribe for weekly updates. This is Kate Morgan and Marie Alessi signing off. Bye for now.